I never believed quiet people were dangerous until I became one. My name is Evelyn Hart, and this story isn't about who I used to be. It's about who I was forced to become. People say betrayal changes you, but they never talk about the slow, silent damage that happens before the breaking point. When you trust someone so deeply that their betrayal doesn't just hurt you, it rearranges the way you see the world. 3 years ago, I was the kind of woman who apologized for things that weren't her fault. The kind who stayed late to help coworkers who would forget her name the next day. The kind who believed loyalty was something sacred. And most of all, I believed in Marcus Hale. He was my mentor, my friend, and the man who promised he would help me rise through the firm. Every achievement I made he soaked in as if it was his own, and at the time I didn't mind. I was naive enough to mistake flattery for guidance and manipulation for care. When the promotion for senior analyst came up, it felt like everything I had worked for was finally aligned. Marcus congratulated me early, saying my work spoke for itself. I believed him. I stayed nights running simulations, tightening reports, polishing presentations. And then the day came. I walked into the conference room confident, hopeful, almost proud. The announcement was short. Marcus Hale was promoted. I wasn't even mentioned. He didn't look at me when he shook hands with the board. But when he passed me, he whispered without moving his lips, "Not your time yet." Like I was a child waiting my turn in a game he controlled. That night, I sat in my car for 30 minutes without moving. The steering wheel felt cold and my hands couldn't stop shaking. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was humiliated. To realize that the man I trusted had used me as a ladder and then kicked me off once he reached his step. Betrayal isn't loud. It's a quiet snap inside the chest. A sudden understanding that the rules you followed were never real. The next morning, I went to work as usual. I smiled, I greeted people, I delivered reports like nothing happened. That's the part Marcus underestimated. He thought I would break. But I was busy watching. And once you start watching, you see everything. Marcus had a weakness. He liked money more than he liked ethics, and he liked taking shortcuts more than he liked hard work. I noticed the small things first. Expenses that didn't match. Approvals signed with signatures slightly too perfect. Funds moved between internal accounts with no project tied to them. I watched patterns form, numbers bend, and lies stack neatly like cards waiting to collapse. I didn't rush. Revenge is an art, and art requires patience. For months, I gathered everything quietly. Screenshots, emails, documents, voicemails. I backed them up in 3 different places. One offline, one encrypted, one hidden where he would never think to look. And still I wasn't ready. Revenge isn't just about proving someone wrong. It's about making sure the fall is so precise that they understand every inch of it on the way down. One evening after everyone left, I walked into Marcus's office. I knew his passcode. He used his daughter's birthday. Men like him always have sentimental weak spots. Inside his email drafts was something I didn't expect. A set of instructions to shift funds into an offshore account. I realized then that Marcus wasn't just stealing. He was preparing to disappear. I printed nothing. I copied nothing. I simply memorized details. Because the strongest weapon against a liar is knowing more than they realize. Then something happened that accelerated everything. A new hire, a woman named Claire, joined our team. She was young, hopeful, excited. The exact version of myself from years ago. Marcus took interest in her immediately. He praised her work, gave her special attention, and within weeks she began relying on him the way I once did. I watched the pattern repeat like a cruel echo. He used the same tone, the same manipulation, even the same smile he used on me. I saw her falling into the same trap. I could have warned her. But sometimes people don't listen until the fire burns them. And I needed the fire. I needed Marcus to step into his own destruction, not because I hated him, but because he deserved to know what it felt like to lose everything he built on stolen ground. One night, Claire came to me crying. Marcus had blamed her for a financial error he created. She thought her career was over. I listened, and for the first time in months I felt something stir inside me. Not pity, clarity. Marcus wasn't just dangerous to me. He was dangerous to anyone who trusted him. That made my revenge more than personal. It made it necessary. The next morning I pressed send on an anonymous package to Internal Affairs. I didn't include everything. Not yet. I gave them enough to start an audit. Enough to make Marcus sweat. Enough to let him feel the first crack beneath his feet. He stormed into the office 2 days later, slamming doors, yelling at assistants, demanding answers. He blamed Claire. He blamed me. He blamed anyone who wasn't him. But blame doesn't erase evidence. And evidence doesn't care about ego. When the auditors arrived, Marcus collapsed into the same traps he set for others. His lies tangled, his explanations contradicted, and his confidence shattered. I watched from my desk while he paced across the conference room, desperate and sweating, trying to untangle a web he had woven too tightly. He didn't fall that day. Not yet. But he started to break. I could see it in the way he avoided eye contact. In the way he double-checked every drawer as if searching for disappearing secrets. He was unraveling thread by thread. He stayed late that night. I knew because I stayed too, sitting quietly in the dark corner of my office. At 11:47 p.m., Marcus walked into the storage room. When he left, I slipped in behind him. On the top shelf, tucked behind old binders, was a flash drive labeled with a false project name. Inside it were records of every illicit transaction he had ever made. He had hidden the evidence of his own destruction. And I found it. That was the moment I knew the revenge was no longer brewing. It had begun. I didn't expose the drive immediately. Power is stronger when you don't use it too quickly. I waited, letting Marcus sink deeper into panic. The audit intensified. Meetings grew tense. Rumors spread. Claire avoided him. People he once charmed now kept their distance. A man used to control was losing everything and he didn't know why. One morning he called me into his office. His voice was too soft, the way wolves sound when pretending to be tame. He offered me coffee. He asked about my workload. He complimented my recent analysis report. And finally he said the words I'd been waiting for. "Evelyn, I feel like someone is sabotaging me." I looked at him, holding the coffee cup he handed me, and said calmly, "That's unfortunate." He waited for more. I gave him nothing. The deeper he sank, the more desperately he tried to cling to whatever power he had left. He snapped at executives. He made wild accusations. He tried to blame Claire again, but the auditors found inconsistencies he couldn't explain. He was becoming the unreliable narrator of his own story. One evening after work, as I packed my bag, I found a note slid under my door. It said only 2 words, "I know." I froze. The handwriting wasn't Marcus's. Someone else had been watching. Someone had connected dots I didn't realize were visible. The message wasn't a threat. It was a warning. But warnings don't stop a storm that has already begun. The next day Marcus didn't show up to work. By noon, word spread that he was reviewing his position with the firm. They called it a voluntary leave. But everyone knew what it really was. The beginning of the end. So I wasn't done. I sent the full drive to the board. No summary, no explanation. Just proof. Clean, undeniable, catastrophic. By evening, Marcus was escorted into the building with 2 security guards to collect his belongings. I watched from my desk the same way he once watched me lose something I had earned. He didn't look at me, but I held his gaze until he disappeared down the hallway. Justice isn't loud. It's quiet. It's the silence after a closing door. I thought the story ended there. But revenge doesn't follow scripts. The next week I was called into the CEO's office. My chest tightened when I saw the audit head sitting across the table. I expected suspicion. Instead they offered me the position Marcus lost. A new salary. A new office. A new life. But power doesn't feel like revenge. It feels like responsibility. And it felt heavier than I expected. Days passed. Weeks blurred. The more success I gained, the more the note haunted me. I know. It wasn't Marcus. Someone else had seen the truth. Someone who understood that revenge, even justified revenge, is never clean. One night I found an email in my inbox from an encrypted address. It contained one sentence. "You broke the cycle. Don't become it." I stared at the screen for minutes. Someone out there understood me more deeply than anyone else ever had. Someone saw that the real revenge wasn't destroying Marcus. It was refusing to become him. That night I called Claire into my office. I told her she deserved better. I trained her, mentored her, protected her career instead of feeding off it. I became the person I wished I had met when I was her age. Not because I wanted to be good, but because revenge without growth is just destruction wearing a different face. Months later I saw Marcus again. Not in person but on a news report. He had been arrested for unrelated financial crimes he committed years before we met. It was surreal watching a man who once controlled my life being led away in handcuffs. People expected me to smile. I didn't. Revenge feels satisfying only for a moment. What lasts is understanding. When I turned off the television, I looked at my reflection in the dark screen. I didn't look triumphant. I looked calm. Free. Revenge didn't give me peace. But it gave me clarity. Here is the lesson I carry. The one I hope someone listens to before they make the same mistakes I did. Sometimes the people who betray you aren't villains. They're lessons. And sometimes the revenge you think you want isn't the real victory. The real win is becoming someone they can never break again. And that's what I became.